You'll want to weep because this dog has shocked everyone by blocking the removal of his owner's life support. The adage goes that man's best buddy is his dog. This anecdote demonstrates how accurate that is. Michael spent his whole career as a law enforcement officer in the canines unit, where he was charged with the care and upbringing of a police dog. He worked with several dogs during his life, but his most memorable companion was a German shepherd named Zeus. Zeus was just a year old when Michael retired from the police department, but the former policeman couldn't bear to leave without the dog. He considered the dog a part of his family, so he asked his employer whether there was any chance he could take the pet with him. Fortunately, the man's supervisor agreed, and Zeus was permitted to accompany him into retirement. Zeus was a mild-mannered puppy despite his imposing moniker. He liked his owner very much, and would much rather snuggle with them than play fight. Michael's family was initially hesitant to welcome the dog inside their house, since the dog had been educated as just a police dog, and so knew how and where to attack if necessary. However, Michael eventually convinced his family that the dog was friendly because he had taught him himself. The family immediately became used to their new puppy, and he was soon treated as just another part of the family. Then something occurred that caused Zeus to abruptly alter his conduct. It had been a few years since the dog had been brought inside. At this point in his life, Zeus was a fully grown adult dog of around 3 years old. The day began like any other day would have, with Zeus and Michael going for a run before breakfast. Michael, however, noted as they got closer to the property that the roof seemed a little old and would require some maintenance. Michael got up early to repair it, so he gathered the gear he'd need and headed for the roof after breakfast. The weird behavior of Zeus began at this moment. In an attempt to keep Michael from standing, the dog barked and whined and even grabbed at his pant leg. Michael had had enough and contacted his wife to ask if the dog could come inside, since he was preventing the guy from working. Michael's request was followed by his wife bringing the dog inside. He fought us all the way back to the home, however. The family heard a horrible scream from the front lawn, not really even 5 minutes later. They all left the home at once, except for Zeus, who was trapped in the kitchen. When they went outdoors, though, they discovered something that floored everyone. After falling from the roof and hitting his head, Michael was found laying on the lawn in the vicinity of the garden. As Michael's wife started to weep, she yelled for him. But the guy showed no sign of responding. While she was doing that, some kids she encountered on the street dialed 911 to request an ambulance. Soon after, paramedics took Michael to the hospital, where he was immediately admitted to emergency medicine and given a battery of diagnostic tests to determine the extent of his injuries. Although the medical staff discovered a shattered arm among other injuries, their primary concern was for Michael's noggin. They concerned that he could have suffered permanent brain damage when his wife reported that he had fallen and smacked his hands on the floor. Michael fell into a coma, and no amount of intervention revived him. After Michael was already hospitalized for some time, his loved ones decided to bring him home and have a nurse keep an eye on him in the hopes that being in a more comfortable setting might stimulate a recovery. Michael went straight home after work, and when he got there, Zeus was the first of his companions. The dog was depressed for days since he couldn't find his owner. 2 years had passed with no evidence that Michael would ever wake up, and the dog had built his house at the foot of the bed, only venturing away for food and bathroom breaks. The mounting expenses of keeping him in the incubator and employing a nurse to care for him drove his family to despair. Zeus was the only goat to remain on the side of the men throughout. A doctor was checking on Michael one day when he discovered anything odd about him. Further examination revealed that Michael could still sense his surroundings despite his inability to move or communicate. Doctors suggested that merciful euthanasia of Michael would be the greatest option at this stage to alleviate everyone's suffering, not just Michael's. Michael's wife was completely shocked by this news and was at a loss for words. She wanted to spend the rest of her life with Michael, her one true love. She reluctantly agreed with the doctor's offer of euthanasia, rationalizing that it could be best for the guy if he were put to rest. The only catch was that Michael needed to go to the hospital for the procedure to be completed. The doctor informed Michael's wife that he would have a team come the following day to take him to the hospital. Zeus sat off to the side and seemed to observe and listen to the proceedings. When paramedics came to take Michael away the next day, an odd incident occurred. After the EMTs entered Michael's room, Zeus barked and growled angrily towards them. As they approached, he bared his fangs in an obvious warning to attack anybody who dared to approach the guy. Medical personnel were too afraid of the dog to proceed into the room until it was safely out of the way. In order to keep Zeus from causing any more damage, Michael's granddaughter walked into the room and forcibly removed him, eventually escorting him away. When the canine was safely out of the path, the paramedics loaded Michael into the vehicle and sped off to the clinic. As Zeus watched the car go away, he started tugging on his leash. After a while of his tugging so hard, the daughter felt she had to let him go. After getting his freedom, the dog immediately took off after the ambulance. After seeing how worked up Michael's dog was, his wife started to wonder whether the dog was attempting to communicate with her. Fearing she had made a grave mistake, she jumped into her vehicle and went after the dog. The animal had grown quite distressed before Michael fell from the rooftop, and he was behaving the same way again. She arrived at the hospital just in time to see Zeus dash into the lobby. The dog followed Michael's scent to the hospital room, where he discovered his master on the verge of death. The doctor was about to administer the medicine when the dog lunged on him, knocking him to the floor. The physician screamed in panic and begged for assistance in removing the dog. The group was ready to attempt and extract the canine when they heard a noise that caused instantaneous paralysis. Michael's heart rate started to increase on the monitor. Soon after, they heard a soft, raspy voice yell at them to stop bothering the dog. While everyone else was too stunned to move, Zeus backed away from the physician. A wagging tail followed him all the way to Michael's hospital bed. Soon after Michael's spouse entered the room, she saw that her spouse had awakened. It made her so happy that she started crying. He miraculously reappeared. As soon as he recovered from his first shock, the doctor climbed to his feet and started to examine the guy to make sure he was all right. In the meanwhile, Michael's wife had already contacted their kids to share the good news. Michael was allowed to go home from the hospital after being there for a few weeks. Zeus became the first to meet him, and he greeted him by leaping to his feet and showering him with kisses. Michael laughed to himself and got on his knees. He showered his dog with affection and a bear embrace. The guy recognized that the dog was the only thing keeping him alive. The moral of the tale is that pets are usually right, and we should pay attention to their advice. Leave a comment and tell me what you think of the tale. Don't forget to hit the like button and provide your email address to get notifications of future posts.